And so, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zuleika Dusalam. I'm honored to serve as the NAACP Political Action Chair. On behalf of the Political Action and Criminal Justice Committees, I want to welcome you all to our District Attorney Candidate Forum. First, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to the candidates for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and willingness to engage with the community and your commitment to transparency and public service. This forum today is an opportunity for our community to hear directly from the community to shape the future of justice in the city of Philadelphia. The role of district attorney not only upholds the law, but in shaping policies that impact the lives of our families, our friends, and our communities. So, with that being said, within every community in the city of Philadelphia deserves to understand each candidate's values, priorities, and plans for equity, safety, and accountability in our justice system. Um, the goal today for this forum is to educate, engage, and empower our communities. And informed communities is a powerful community. So, with that being said, I thank you all again, and I'll turn it over to Bridget.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bridget Warlea. I am the chair for the Philadelphia NAACP's Criminal Justice Committee and have been delighted to work with Zuleika, Keir, and President Hicks in planning this forum. I thank both candidates, DA Krasner and Judge Dugan, for joining us today. Also want to thank Elder DuBose for his support of the Philly NAACP. And with that, I will pass it on to my co-moderator, Keir Bradford-Grey.
Thank you so much, Bridget, and thank you so much, Zuleika. And I want to say a special thank you to President Catherine Hicks, who has constantly sought to bring information to our community about matters that are very important and impactful to us. I also want to thank both District Attorney Krasner as well as Judge Dugan for their participation in this very important conversation. I can say, and I must say, I have worked with both gentlemen on various issues, and I have respect for the work that both of them have done. But I am glad that we have this very good and in-depth conversation about matters with respect to public safety and justice system practices, as well as social justice practices that really have an impact on the African-American community. So with that, I will give it over to President Hicks to see if she wants to say anything before we move on with introductions from the candidates.
Thank you. Thank you both. I am just going to say welcome to everyone. We want to get this started because this is very important. I too want to thank both candidates for joining us this evening. And again, to our criminal justice chair, Bridget Warlea, and of course, our political action chair, Zuleika. I want to thank you both for putting this on. And Keir Bradford-Grey, thank you for being a part of this and always, stepping up when the NAACP needs you. So I appreciate you all. Let's get started. This is important information that we need, and I'm eager to hear from both candidates. Thank you both.
So before we get started, I will just ask if there can be introductions. But before I do that, Bridget, do you want to lay the groundwork in terms of the time and how the time will be tracked?
Yes, sure thing. Candidates, as you know, you have 2.5 minutes for your introductions, and then we will go through a series of questions to which you will have 2 minutes each to answer, and we will alternate on which candidate will begin answering questions. When we are nearing the 30-second mark, my colleague Zuleika will put her hand up like so, just so you know that you only have 30 seconds left. We ask that, we respect the time. We have a good amount of thoughtful questions for you all to answer. And we also, ask that we play well together on this fine Sunday afternoon. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Hey, I want to ask DA Krasner, I see you may be on a cell phone. Will you be able to see Zuleika if she does hold her hand up, or is there another way that we should inform of the time since you may not be sitting at a computer?
Well, thank you for asking, Public Defender Bradford-Grey. The situation is as follows. I actually have a timer on this phone. So even though I cannot see Zuleika, at least until I get to a place which is a little more under control, I'm just leaving an early Mother's Day event for the community. I'll be able to see the time myself. So if I go over, please let me know. I don't want to do that, but I will be watching a timer the whole time on my cell phone.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we will set the groundwork. We already set the groundwork. I'm really looking forward to this robust conversation. I think with two people who have expertise in the system, we should be able to have a very informative discussion. For me, I appreciate healthy competition. I will say, though, if anyone needs a rebuttal, if you can ask, if you can respond, that would be great. And we can definitely give you a minute for that if there is something worthy to respond to. If you do go after one another's policies or practices, please respond in your response. Let us know how you would do things differently. We want this to be a very informative dialogue. So I will start by letting you both introduce yourself. DA Krasner, since you are the incumbent, I will give you 2.5 minutes to introduce yourself and why we should be looking for a third term with you at the helm.
Thank you very much. Number one, it is really an honor to be invited to do this. I have tremendous respect for the history of the NAACP, the achievements of the Legal Defense Fund, the achievements of Thurgood Marshall, only the greatest lawyer of his century, and the incredibly important work that has been done. And frankly, if it had not been done, can you imagine where we would be right now? But let me say this by way of introduction. This is a city that right now is safer and it is fairer than it was when I took office in 2018. Is that all me? No, absolutely not. That is the work of a lot of people together, and it has been a rough road with the pandemic. But I will say this, it is important to note that as I speak to you, we have the lowest number of homicides on this day of the year in over 50 years. That is truly remarkable. It is also noteworthy that in 18 categories of crime that are regularly posted, in fact, daily posted by the Philadelphia Police Department, we are down in 15 of those categories. And to make the point even finer, we are in a situation where for 4 consecutive years, Philadelphia has been getting safer more quickly than the average of other cities of a million or more. We are not on this train. The whole country is getting safer right now. We're not just on this train. We're not the caboose on the train. Philadelphia is the locomotive on the train of improvement. And no, it is not the case that we simply went up and now we're back down. It is the case that we went up during the pandemic, like every other city and like the whole country. We came back down, and now we are way below where we were before the pandemic. We are way below where we were when my administration took office. Again, I'm not saying that's me, but that is a collaborative effort by community, by some people in government, and by a whole lot of good coaches, good school teachers, people running good camps, dedicated people running their own mom and pop community-based organizations. So we should be happy that we are much safer than we were. Is it fairer? Well, I got 45 people you can ask. They were all exonerated with the approval of a judge, and they are out now. And I will also say, if you come to my office, you will find that the diversity of the attorneys has improved in every single category. And that is the result of diligently going all around the country, including all 6 HBCU law schools that remain in the United States, and recruiting the most talented people we could possibly find from all over the country. So it is safer. It is fairer. We are also freer, which is a portion of fairness. And I say that because if you can have your safety, you also want your freedom. We have the lowest, at this point, approximately 3,600, the lowest county jail population that I have heard of in my career. We also have, and I see I'm approaching 3 minutes. I'll try to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm over. I apologize. Let me stop right now.
All right. Zuleika, I had asked DA Krasner if he was able to see you. He's not able to see you, but if he gets to the time, we may have to politely let him know.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, DA Krasner, for that introduction. Judge Dugan, why will Philadelphia be better off with you at the helm? And if you can please introduce yourself and please answer that question.
Right. And Zuleika, I ask you to kindly interrupt me when I get that at 2.5 minutes, despite being in a location. I'm having issues with my computer, some on my cell phone as well. So, yeah, I'm Pat Dugan, lifelong Philadelphian. born in Fairmount. We moved to Frankfurt, right near the Margaret Orthodox L stop. So I've been here my entire life, except for time that I served in the military. And just a quick story about who my hero is. My mother is my hero. And let me go back for a second here. I appreciate that everybody's involved with what we're doing here today. The NAACP, thank you so much. I respect the organization, understand the goals, and we have to continue to try to reach those goals. So as a child, I'm sitting on the steps in Fairmount, 1960s, all kinds of issues going on in our country. Dr. King was assassinated. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. In Philadelphia, we had race riots. We had riots and demonstrations up at Girard College. I lived right near there. My grandmother was working in Girard College. She was one of the folks who cleaned the tables in the kitchen. She also was one of the people who organized to bring the Teamsters into Girard College. But we're sitting on her steps, my mother and I'm 6 or 7, and a young black teenager is riding his bike as fast as he can past our home. He's being chased by old heads in the neighborhood. They catch him. They start to beat him with one of those police barricade boards, those big old yellow boards. My mother jumped off the step to go over there and protect that young man, keep those old heads away from him, bring that young man and his bike over to the steps until the police arrived so they could safely take that young kid home with his bike. My mother jumped off the steps in danger, not afraid of the repercussions, because you have to do what is right. I'm basically saying I'm getting off the steps. I'm getting off the bench because I believe we could do a lot better than what's been going on for the last 8 years.
30 seconds.
Okay, so I just believe some of the things that have been going on, including the high turnover rate in the district attorney's office. There were 68 out of 78 attorneys who have left in one class. I've seen up to 70% withdrawal rate in the courtrooms. We've had 3,200 murders since the district attorney took office. If we're going to give him credit for the numbers going down, we got to give him credit for all those numbers that went up. We were called Philadelphia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we will go to questions prepared by the Philadelphia NAACP. Reminder, gentlemen, you have 2 minutes to answer these questions, and we will begin with DA Krasner. What is your philosophy on the role of the district attorney in society, and how does that or will that impact the actual functioning of the office?
Thank you for the question. So the oath is quite straightforward. The oath of a DA is to seek justice and uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States, as well as local stuff. That's the oath. And that's what it really should be. You should be trying to do individual justice in every case. Individual justice does not mean it's just about the people in the courtroom. It's also about everyone else in the city of Philadelphia, whether or not they have what they need, including school nurses, school counselors, adequate class size. And so if you spend all of your resources unnecessarily incarcerating people, and let's be clear, some people do need to be incarcerated for a very long time, but many of those who are in custody in the most incarcerated country in the world shouldn't be there, right? So if you spend all of that money to promote yourself or to look tough because that has been politically successful, then you're not doing justice. We have made a point of making sure that the prosecution gives the defense all the evidence to which they are entitled. Why? Because the Constitution says so. And that is my oath. And that is not what happened in that office previously. You can ask the 45 people who are out of jail now. We have made a point of trying to be surgical in terms of who needs a life sentence, who needs a long sentence, and who needs no sentence at all, and what should we even prosecute? For example, why are we prosecuting marijuana possession when you can buy it in Deptford, New Jersey legally? Why are we doing that? Shouldn't we be spending our time on homicides? And we've seen some real benefits from that. We have ourselves not only advocated for, but actually invested heavily in prevention, which has been a success. And we have also heavily relied upon scientific forensics to solve cases that couldn't be solved before. The results speak for themselves. We are safer. It is a fair system now, and we are pursuing that oath. That is our philosophy.
Thank you for that that answer to that question. And I want to just go into a little bit more when we're talking about the function and the resource allocation. There's been lots of discussions about local DA support for ending cash bail, yet it continues to be used currently even for low-level offenses, some nearing $1 million for retail theft. Given the ongoing debate and concerns about fairness and public safety, what have we learned about the impact of cash bail? And Judge Dugan, if elected, do you plan to change the approach of how we use cash bail moving forward?
So yeah, cash bail in many instances winds up just being an economic hold for those who can't afford it. I mean, if somebody's given $1,000 bail, it's basically $110 to get out. And if somebody can't pay that, they're going to sit there for weeks or months at a time. That cannot continue to happen. I believe the courts have worked pretty good at doing SOBs and RORs in order to help reduce that. I actually believe that a lot of the cash bail should be going away. One of the policies I will not have $999,999 policy, which was in effect quite often during these last couple of years. In fact, the Bail Fund did a study. They looked at 451 random cases and found out that the current district attorney asked for that kind of bail in over 53% of those cases. By the way, 79% of those people that he asked for that bail were people of color, and there were at least 40% of those cases were very low-level misdemeanor charges. So I don't understand that policy. I will not have a policy like that. I will look at what the charge is and the record of the individual sitting there. Look at it individually. But these low-level crimes, these bails, we have to really look at it. And yes, most of the cash bail we should be doing away with it.
May I have 1 minute on that, please?
Yes, I would just want to frame it because you were named in terms of a policy you have enacted. And I want to know, given the fact that we have worked on this issue extensively, what have you learned and why, what is the reason for policy changes? And basically, has it worked to meet your goals?
Public Defender Bradford-Grey, is that 1 minute or two?
Give you a minute and a half.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. So our policy very early on was to simulate a no cash bail system, which is what we have done for 7 years as best we can. The law prevents us from completely replacing it. And let us be clear, those bails at first arrest are set by bail commissioners. For 5 of those years, those bail commissioners were hired by President Judge Pat Dugan. Yep. Those were his people. Yep. So there's a difference between what we recommend and what happens. What has actually happened is that we have reduced the number of people sitting in jail for less serious offenses very significantly for cash bail, and we've increased the bails for the most serious offenses. That's what we wanted to accomplish, and we did it for very specific reasons. I don't know how someone can look at a jail population of 3,600, which is the lowest that I have seen since 1987. I don't know how someone can look at that, as my opponent seems to be doing, and claim that we're not being fair when it comes to bail. The reality is we used either asked for no cash bail or asked for slightly under $1 million or more, because the prison itself will house you differently if it's $1 million or more. And it became a real problem during the pandemic when we did not want it to be a super spreader. So imperfect though it is, and I do want a legislative change to eliminate cash bail so we hold the people, if they need to be held, has nothing to do with money or not. Even though that is what ultimately we want, we have made tremendous progress in this regard, and it's reflected in our numbers of people in county custody.
That's time.
Thank you.
So can I respond to that?
I just want to make sure of this because I don't want to do that. My co-moderator is reminding me. I don't know, Judge, if you got a chance to finish your answer. Did you get a chance to finish your answer in the first round? Because I think you still had time.
I'd kind of like to go back to this Philadelphia Bail Fund, an independent study. I'm reading the quotes.
Wait, give us 1 minute because we got to give you how much time you're allocated for that. And I apologize to my co-moderator. Okay. I was not sure. So are we allocating him a minute?
I think for question 1, Judge Dugan, you didn't get a chance to answer, correct, on your philosophy on the
I did not get a chance to answer what my philosophy will be in the district attorney's office.
All right, we will go back
I
to
didn't
that.
answer that at all.
We will go back to that, Judge. And so that was my mistake. So why don't we give you a minute to respond, and then we'll go back to the question.
Okay, so the bail fund. Yes, I hired the magistrates and I made them look a lot more like the city. I brought attorneys in, people of color, but this is a bail fund study right here that I'm reading. Um, Luckily, Philadelphia bail magistrates, themselves no progressive heroes, have refused to go along with Krasner's scheme. Again, $999,000 bail in 53% of the cases. 40% of them were low level. So I don't understand. Perhaps his people in his office don't understand what his strategies are, but this is the reality of what was going on. He was actually doing this, again, 79% people of color. That's who he was targeting with his failed policies. They talked about New Jersey and DC. By contrast, they were doing it better. So I don't know what he was trying to do, but it sure was a mess. And if a magistrate makes a decision the DA doesn't like, all he has to do is appeal, and they almost never appeal that decision. Should I go into the philosophy?
Bridget, we can re-ask the
I'm
question
sorry.
if you'd like. That was my fault.
That's okay.
No worries. Judge Dugan, what is your philosophy on the role of the district attorney in society? And how does that how will that philosophy impact the actual functioning of the office?
So my philosophy is going to be quite simple. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. The role of the prosecutor, one of the main roles is to actually be a prosecutor and to take care of victims and witnesses. That means upholding the law. And I'm talking from gun cases all the way down to retail thefts, illegal dumping. Finally, the DA is going to focus on that, but only if they give him more money in July. How many people have been prosecuted for illegal dumping, for putting stuff in our rivers and our creeks? How many people have been arrested for solicitation of prostitutes? They used to get arrested so that they wouldn't continue to victimize a neighborhood or those folks trapped in the sex trafficking world. We do not charge those people anymore. Animal abuse, that is not charged anymore. Retail theft, that was virtually not charged. We went from 7,200 retail thefts after Larry's policy saying everything is now going to be a ticket to 24,000 retail thefts last year. And how many are being prosecuted? Less than 2% were arrested. Much less than that have been prosecuted. White collar crimes are not prosecuted. Gun conviction rate is the lowest it's ever been. And again, 3,200 murders in the city of Philadelphia, and 10,000 people have been shot in the city of Philadelphia since Larry Krasner took office. I'm going to take care of restorative justice for those with low-level crimes and issues, put them in programs, but also prosecute criminals, including carjackings.
All right. And I think, DA Krasner, I kind of gave you a shortage on the second question, which was about cash bail. So, because I was thinking we were going one by one, and I apologize to my co-moderator for that mistake. Would you mind, Bridget, if we gave DA Krasner one more minute because he got a minute and a half?
Of course.
All right, DA Krasner, you get 1 minute. Zuleika will stop you when it's time.
Thank you. So unfortunately, one of the things you're going to hear during this forum is a piling on of one supposed fact after another, and they will either be flatly untrue, misleading, quarter truths, or half truths. I just heard a whole pile of them. Most of the people listening already know that a lot of that suggestion is ridiculous. A lot of those numbers are completely off base, and it's unfortunate because we're in a moment in American society when we are up against Donald Trump, and we should be telling the truth, and we should be telling the truth all the time. That's where we should be. When we hear about the bail fund, what's being left out is that a number of bail funds went broke, and it was because they were bailing out people who really should have been in and didn't show up for court or got into arrests. The fact that they want everyone out does not mean I share that. I feel that people who shoot people, who rape people, should be in custody. And I think most people feel the same way. So I would just ask all of you, take with a grain of salt what you hear. I will be happy to give you the sources for my information.
And that's time.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make sure that we know, I know Dia Krasner remembers me as the public defender, but I am now civil rights lawyer for the Maroon Law Firm. And I'm very proud of that position and role. So I just wanted to make sure we understood that for purposes of moving forward. Go ahead, Bridget. I think you're next.
Okay, great. Going back to order, so I think Judge Dugan began question number 2. So we are going to go back to beginning with DA Krasner. When it comes to crimes related to social conditions such as retail theft, prostitution, and addiction, should the district attorney's office pursue criminalization, decriminalization, or adopt an approach somewhere in the middle? How would or does your office address these issues while maintaining a quality of life for folks in the city?
And that is 2 minutes, correct? All right, thank you. My policy has been not to prosecute prostitution. Why? Because I view them as victims. And in addition to doubling the number of people we have who do victim services, I believe that we should be supporting victims everywhere. We do not prosecute that. We are all about a public health approach to support them. But if they get out of that life, the last thing that they need is to be walking around with a series of convictions when they try to get a job at a grocery store. When we talk about addiction, my position has been on drug possession that if you are arrested, we will in fact charge it, but we try to get every single drug possession case into some form of treatment. That has been our approach from the beginning. It has altered a bit only because the police do the same thing, and they do it in large numbers before we ever see that case. The truth is the United States needs more of a public health approach. The most successful drug program in the history of the world, in my opinion, is one that they have had for addicts, opioid addicts in Portugal now for 25 years. There are no judges and lawyers involved. This is done, was designed by a medical doctor, and it is done by people with expertise on how to find out what the underlying problem is that often leads to self-medication through drug abuse. And in that process, Lisbon, which is the capital of Portugal, has gone from 5,000 people living and dying on the streets from heroin to an 80% reduction. It works. It's what we have to do. We've learned from the war on drugs that if you're going to criminalize homelessness, which we shouldn't, if you're going to criminalize addiction, if you're going to criminalize trauma and suffering and mental health issues, then you're going to get what we have, which is the dismantling of 85% of our mental health system, rampant addiction, and of course its outcome, one of which is sex work. So I very much believe we need to move away from mass incarceration and towards a more public health approach.
Thank you. Judge Dugan, 2 minutes.
Okay. Retail theft needs to be prosecuted. And one of the things that we could do with some retail theft folks, people who are accused of that crime, is that we could start some sort of retail theft court. So to the parents who are coming in to steal because they need formula or diapers or food for their children, we can work something out with those individuals. We can have some very specific type of assistance, whether it's helping them find a job with some food, etc. Is there some other issues that we could help them with? As far as prostitution, we had a very successful court called Dawn's Court. We had over 87% success rate. We actually had at least 18 drug-free births. So these women who are out there on the streets, trapped in a world, we actually assisted them reunify with their family. We got rid of their VOPs. We helped them find jobs. We got them off drugs instead of just leaving them out there lingering to die. They are now becoming the statistics in terms of they're the ones that they're finding in the body bags. So to allow people to just sit out on the corner, sticking heroin in their arms while the people selling the drugs are doing it in open air, the victims are, besides the drug user, the neighborhood. We cannot just sit back and tolerate that. This is great. The theory of Portugal, it works over there. I've heard Larry talk about this now for 8 years. I don't understand. It's not the policy. The policy, the laws are on the books. We should enforce them, but we should enforce some of them with care. We should help people get beds and treatment. No doubt about it. I agree with that. But somebody needs to help these neighborhoods and these folks that are using and stealing a little bit better than is happening now.
May I respond?
I think if we can move forward to the next question, because I do think that you both had an ample chance to talk about that issue, and I don't know if there were direct attacks that we could go ahead and respond. So I just wanted to move to the next question because I do think we're getting into a little bit more of where we want to understand your philosophy on how you will work to actually improve the goal of public safety and the perceptions of public safety. You both have known that this role is about also working with law enforcement, and both of you have been criticized on each end. And I'd like to hear from your perspective what you will do to advance the goals of public safety through this particular relationship. So I'll start with you, Judge Dugan. Judge Dugan, as someone who has held judicial roles, how will you ensure that the DA's office fosters an internal culture of integrity and independence, especially in cases involving law enforcement? You have been criticized and as having a bias towards police officers, given a decision that was made some time ago, but it's still one that has been pretty memorable. Can you speak to how you will help improve the perception, but also how you will foster that culture in your office with the existing DAs or people you recruit?
Yeah, it's quite simple. We have to follow the evidence. Whether it's a law enforcement officer or a regular citizen or an immigrant, whatever the evidence, whatever the facts are showing, that's what the integrity of the office needs to stand, that we follow that. And if it's a police officer, then we have to prosecute them. And yes, I understand. I made a very tough decision. I believe it was 2013. I made that decision based off what was presented in front of me as a judge. I had my judge hat on. So I was in there. The prosecution presented a case, the defense presented a case, and basically the prosecution laid out a bunch of witnesses who told me they were scared. People were throwing bottles at them. A national expert testified that said the use of force did not rise to the level of criminality. There were 10 character witnesses, which the lawyers understand a character witness can play a role in whether or not a judge finds somebody guilty or not guilty. Just one character witness is enough because that's telling you that this person has no other criminal activity in their history. So, based off what I heard in the court, and I wish that there were cameras in the courtroom so everybody could have seen what the evidence was presented to me that day. I also, in my decision, said that perhaps that officer should be fired or disciplined. But based off the evidence that was presented, I found him not guilty. And oh, by the way, one of the esteemed leaders of the NAACP contemporaneously agreed with me. It was Jerry Mondesire. It's actually in the Tribune right after that, that he basically said he didn't think the officer should be charged. Well, he was. It was presented to me, and he actually agreed with my decision. So the integrity in the office, yes, we can't have anybody lacking integrity. We can't have an office where a judge is ordering every single assistant district attorney. They have to take a class for candor to the court. I'm sorry, was that somebody saying my time was up?
That's your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah, feel free to just go right in there, Zakiya.
Really, Zuleika, before we
Zuleika, I'm sorry.
no, I'll let you say your name because I could be messing it up too, Zuleika.
No, you have it. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm sorry. I didn't want to assume that I was 100% right either. Before we go to you, DA Krasner, Judge Dugan, I really would like you to take 30 more seconds to answer how will you foster a culture within the office to have that, like as you just described, a balanced perspective towards the independence of that office to follow the facts, even if it is against law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, while officers are very important to a vast majority of the cases, we have to have a relationship with the police department to make sure that we can bring those people in. But it's each and every individual's oath to uphold their job, the Constitution, but also with integrity and fidelity. So it's the each attorney and the offices. That's their reputation. That's what who they are as a person. So we cannot have that. We have to be above reproach. And if an officer or somebody is doing that, and that's through training, that's through bringing in experts to talk to our assistant district attorneys, is through supervisors and mentorships. But no, we can't tolerate those who are going to look the other way. Absolutely not.
Thank you. And DA Krasner, with respect to your office, you know that you have been criticized as having a bias against police officers in most portions. Some so recently as judges who have pretty much criticized your handlings of exoneration cases in claiming that you did not use ethical natures in doing so. You've also been criticized in the way that you have handled some police officers' grand jury indictments by some of our Democratic justices and as well as Republican justices in the Supreme Court. How will you foster a understanding and awareness that your office is not anti-office police officers, given those two very public criticisms, but also how has it hampered or allowed your office to have a good relationship with police so that you're able to get cases on and moved in the most expeditious and efficient manner for justice to be served for victims?
Well, I want to talk about the Josie case because I do think it is a defining moment for Judge Dugan we need to talk about. But let me try to quickly respond to the other point. We have historic achievements in police accountability. We have a very close and positive relationship, in my opinion, both with this commissioner and the two prior, and also with a current FOP president, Roosevelt Poplar. Our relationship with McNesby was bad. It should have been. And we all know why. The man's a white supremacist. Is there anything else I need to say on that point? But the Josie case is crucial. I hear the judge saying, gee, I wish that there were cameras in court. How about the cameras that were at the scene? The video of the Josie assault in which this officer, who was a big, strong man, hit a much smaller woman hard in the face, so hard, he knocked her down and with his left hand, then pushed her to the ground. Could not be clearer. You can believe your ears if you want to hear what my opponent is saying, or you can believe your eyes. I encourage you to watch that video. The conclusion is inescapable that this woman who had done absolutely nothing to anyone, absolutely nothing, got clobbered and got clobbered on video marching in the Puerto Rican Day parade. It was completely unacceptable. And what Judge Dugan is not telling you is that the courtroom, when he made that career building decision, was full of police officers, including one very close to him, okay? Which raises separate issues of the propriety of a judge having people close to him sitting in a proceeding, obviously on one side, something I, in my entire time of being married to a judge for 19 years, never did and never would do. Josie tells you the story. Are you going to believe your ears or are you going to believe your eyes? We all know words are cheap. But when you make a decision to ignore the obvious and overwhelming evidence of police abuse, that tells us what we need to know about whether you are actually going to hold police officers accountable.
Thank you for that, DA Krasner. But I really would like for you to answer the other portion of my question that does deal with some of the criticisms that you've received and with respect to your handling of police officer cases, not just from right-wing judges and Supreme Court justices, but also from Democratic judges and Supreme Court justices. I also want to make sure that we answer the question as to how has that hurt or helped your ability to work with law enforcement to get cases put on? I will give you a minute for that.
Sure. I think it's important to recognize that out of all of the exonerations we have sought, only, to the best of my knowledge, we've only failed twice, meaning supported. We've only failed twice. So let us not focus too much on a couple of judges as opposed to all the other ones who often commended us for our ethics, for our accountability, for being respectful of the rule of law. But I will speak about those people, and I'm not going to put their names in play. Every single one of them. To the best of my recollection, every single one of them was a district attorney in Philadelphia under Lynn Abraham. Do you get what I'm saying here? Every single one of them worked in this office at a time when some pretty terrible things were going on. None has a record for having stood up to that. One of them, the one Judge Dugan actually quoted, Judge Anne Marie Coyle, has been found by an appellate court, and this is very uncommon, to have an, quote, animus against the DA's office, unquote. This is a person registered Republican every single cycle when she voted, except this one, in which she has changed over to Democrat. Let you figure out what that means.
Next time.
Thank you for that.
Can I
Judge,
correct something
we'll
that
give
he
you
said?
30 seconds. We'll give you 30
Okay.
seconds to respond
So,
because you were
right,
named in majority of
yeah,
that answer.
he's piling on. It was not, she was not marching in the parade. It was the post parade, Lar. And also, if we're going to go down cases, there are thousands of cases I want you to answer about. What about Stephen Jones, the pedophile that you sought endorsement from, that you were the only person who knew he was convicted of being a pedophile? What about Sergio Hyland, one of the guys you got off that just committed another murder? What are you going to do about that? You're going to keep prosecuting the case of one of your supporters who heckles me at events, and you've been with him dozens and dozens of times? You got one case to talk to me about. There are thousands of cases about you, Mr. Krasner. Answer some of them.
We're at time.
I think that's time. And I just want to do a little bit of fact checking on both sides. I do understand that it wasn't DA Krasner's office that released Mr. Hyland. Mr. Hyland was released based on expired term of the sentence. But also, I want to make sure that I do fact check on your side, DA Krasner. While Judge Coyle is deemed to be very conservative, one of your district attorneys did get on the stand and admit that he did not read an affidavit that exonerated a person where he attested to the facts. So these are things that I think people need to be informed of as well as we're talking about what's fair and what's not.
Thank you,
Okay.
Keir.
Yeah. Bridget.
Next question. According to the DA's public data dashboard, the district attorney's office has only received guilty verdicts for 6% of aggravated assaults, 5% of robberies, 3% of robberies with a deadly weapon, and 10% of carjackings. This question is to DA Krasner. How do you define public safety, and what metrics would you use to evaluate whether your policies and practices are keeping the community safe?
I assume that's 2 minutes. I'm not looking at the data that you have before you, but I suspect what's going on there is we're not counting the cases that are still open. That is usually what it is. Our conviction rate for shootings and homicides is approaching 90%, which is way past anything Lynn Abraham ever achieved. And the truth is her office-wide conviction rate was only about 25%, if you are to check on that. So, again, I'm not looking at the exact data, but we have to be very careful in analyzing it because it often has subcategories, and you have to look at all of those categories to see what is involved there. How do we define public safety? We can get into the minutiae, or we can look at the big picture. The big picture is we have fewer homicides today than we've had for 50 years on this date. We are no less poor as a city. We do not have fewer guns. We have more guns every single day. I think we are all familiar with the phrase, you need to judge a tree by its fruit. Well, the fruit here is safety, and the fruit here is fairness, and the fruit here is freedom. And rather than look at a particular isolated data point, that is how we know whether or not we have a healthy tree. One of the things that you are hearing from my opponent is basically that he wants to go backwards. When he talks about Dawn Court, which was a failed court that discriminated against people who were not of one gender, it is a court that believed the only way to help people was to lock them up and give them a criminal record. You are hearing something. I do not believe the only way to help people is to lock them up first. We're even hearing that now from conservatives on homelessness. We're supposed to lock people up for falling asleep when they have no place to live. This is all an excuse for not doing what is modern, what works, what moves us forward. We need to do what is modern, what works, and what moves us forward. And the work of prevention and the work of modern enforcement together are how we're going to get there.
Thank you. Judge Dugan, can you please speak to how you define public safety and what metrics you would use to evaluate your success?
Right. So what I just heard was you gave numbers like 6%, 5%, 10% that the DA was actually had a little bit of success on. And he flipping the numbers around saying we got a 90% conviction rate. Gaslighting is what this is called. This is Trumponian. It truly is. Larry, you are more responsible for Donald Trump being elected president of the United States than anybody else in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania based off your non-prosecution of violent crimes. And the prosecution of cases that you move forward on violent crimes, you lose at a tremendous rate because people are not trained properly. I'm sorry, definition of public safety is that the violence on the street needs to come down, that we listen to victims and witnesses every single day. If they're telling us this happened, we need to come in and talk to them, not ignore them, not let them read about the deal that the office makes, like Mike Pionk at 54th and Delancey, who was shot with an AK-47, and then he reads about it in the paper that Larry gave a deal of 3.5 years for getting shot with an AK-47. That is ludicrous that is occurring. Victims should be contacted. That's part of public safety. It's in cooperation with the police department, the mayor's office, the Office of Public Safety. It's talking to Harrisburg. We used to have a DA's association that the Philadelphia DA was a member of, and 2 people on the DA's staff could be part of the liaison with Harrisburg to help make laws for public safety. Larry unilaterally stepped out of that organization instead of being the leader, which as the Philadelphia DA, you would be the leader, and we would have 2 people assigned to liaison with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania at the legislature and the governor's office for public safety laws. But now we don't have anybody doing that from his office because he doesn't work with the DA's association. We have to work together. I'm not going backwards. I have 17 years of being a reformer on the bench, and Dawn's court worked.
Thank you, Judge Dugan. DA Krasner, I'll give you 1 minute to rebut. And can you please also speak directly to verdicts at trial rather than guilty pleas?
Sure. So, as I kind of expected, it's this sort of scattershot approach of random accusations, such as we don't prosecute retail theft. We prosecute every single retail theft we get. That we don't communicate with victims. I doubled the number of victims advocates. We tightened the protocol for communication with them. It is sometimes hard to do this because people are traumatized. They may also be living in poverty. Their phone numbers change, their emails change. We send letters, we send detectives. It's not always perfect, but we try incredibly hard to do these kinds of things. I do think we need to go to the fundamental issue, though. What does it mean to have, as a chief prosecutor, a person who is willing to be so misleading? What does it mean to have someone who will throw random accusations out and does not substantiate it? What does it mean to have someone who is constantly saying things were better before? And when was before? That was Seth Williams and Lynn Abraham. It was before we had 3,600 in county. When I came in, we had 6,500. When Lynn Abraham was in, it was almost 10,000. The reason you keep hearing my opponent talk about the bad old days is because he wants to go back to the bad old days, and I have no intention of doing that.
I wanted to follow up with something because I think it's worthy of a response. Judge Dugan brought up the fact that, DA Krasner, you are not a part of the District Attorneys Association. And while I do appreciate the advocate you've been for criminal justice reform, why is it that you have elected not to be a part of a very large organization that has a huge voice in Harrisburg that can be used to push and advance better, sensible policies? Do you think that you being a part of this could help sway people towards a different viewpoint, or do you think by staying out of it, you are helping us at the state level?
I think I'm definitely helping us in the long term, and I'll tell you exactly why. There are 2 main reasons. Point 1, the way that organization works, a county that has a tiny population and a single part-time prosecutor has just as many votes as Philadelphia. Philadelphia has 40% of all the prosecutors in the state. Pittsburgh has another big chunk. And yet Our votes are counted as if this was the US Senate and we were Vermont. That is by design. The whole point is to make sure that large cities, and these are the ones with large democratic and diverse populations, don't have a real say. I was in the organization initially, and every time they wanted something more and more and more draconian, I would speak against it, and it didn't matter. They would then vote for the draconian measure, go to the legislature and say, all of these DAs are in this organization, we're united. By stepping away, it put me in a position to say 40% of the prosecutors in the state are not united in wanting more death penalty, are not united in wanting more mandatories. We're not united in wanting longer sentences. And
Time.
please, I'm sorry. Okay.
I do want to just understand something you just said. So by stepping away, is it clear? Do prosecutors, the 40%, do they have a voice?
The answer, civil rights attorney, Keir Bradford-Grey, you're welcome, is they do have a voice because we now have legislators saying, well, the Pennsylvania DAs Association thinks this. What do you think? That never happened before. We were always put in the corner and glossed over as if we agreed with these draconian measures. And please remember that this association, during the rise of mass incarceration, made Pennsylvania much more incarcerated than the rest of the country. We had an 800% increase in jail population. The US had 500%. That's what they achieved. Their whole purpose was to be maximally carceral, maximally punitive. That is entirely contrary to what works, and it's entirely contrary to public safety.
All right, that's time. Thank you for that answer. We're just going to move on to our next question. I've been hearing a lot of talk about Trump and local DAs going after Trump. And while I think we get the message, we know that local DAs don't have much authority over federal policies, but they can push back in certain ways. DA Krasner, as the DA, what percentage of your office's resources would you dedicate to countering Trump's initiatives, and exactly what would you do and how would you do it?
Thank you for the question. Well, point one that people need to know is that local prosecutors have real power. And that is because Trump cannot pardon their convictions. Okay? So you have Zach Reel, head of the Proud Boys from Philly, doing 20 years in federal prison for atrocious crimes. He gets pardoned by Trump. If he does anything like that here, he's going to do every day. And Trump can't do anything about it. Ever wonder why they don't want to come here so much? Well, it might just be because they know what they're going to get if they come here. They're going to get a Philly jury, and they're going to get a sentence they can't escape. Point two, 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution very specifically says the president cannot order local law enforcement to enforce federal law, which is what he's trying to do all over the country. He even has a sheriff in Bucks County who's signing up for this. We should be solving homicides. We should be solving rapes. We should be shutting down shooting groups, solving shootings. We should be going after all of Trump's cronies who he doesn't want to prosecute. We should not stop all of that to drag hardworking immigrants out of the house in front of their children. We should not do that. I fully intend to rely on the 10th Amendment to say the necessary no when that goes on. And then, of course, finally, anytime you empower a group such as ICE agents and you let them think they can do whatever they want, they're going to go rogue, at least some of them. And in the same way that my office has historic achievements in terms of successfully prosecuting police officers and detectives for perjury, for homicide, for other very, very serious crimes, we can do that to ICE agents or to other federal agents if they decide the Constitution and laws do not apply here. It is my sworn oath. It is not enough to say I might do something. And frankly, I've already proved this. And I proved it by going after Elon Musk as quickly as I could when it became clear he was trying to buy an election. Some even think he's trying to buy an election now. I guess we'll see later when we see some records. But we need to stand up, and everybody knows that I am going to stand up.
That's time.
Thank you. And before you answer, Judge Dugan, can I just ask you quickly, DA Krasner, whatever happened to that lawsuit with respect to Elon Musk? Can you let us know the outcome?
Sure. So that was not a full lawsuit. That was a preliminary injunction. In other words, it's an effort to stop something real fast because of the timing. We had a couple days of hearings in front of a judge, and the day before the election, the judge determined that he was not going to stop this practice. However, filing the lawsuit stopped Musk from giving out any more $1 million amounts in Pennsylvania. And within a period of months, there were 3 class action lawsuits based upon the revelations that came out in court on behalf of millions of people against Elon Musk. So in that sense, it was a success because it started that process. We then saw Wisconsin gather up its courage and do something similar there, which was not immediately successful either.
I wanted to stop. I just wanted to ask you about the success of your office. I'm glad we know what happened in Wisconsin, but thank you so much for that follow-up. Judge Dugan, you have been able to have messaging about the fact that this race is not against Trump, it's against you and DA Krasner. However, we do know that federal policies can influence justice system practices. But for you, how much time do you think your office would spend combating Trump? And in what ways do you think that your office's resources will be spent combating Trump initiatives and policies?
Well, one of the things I can guarantee that we'll do, and the current regime is constantly saying they have all these fantastic attorneys. I'm not sure why we got to spend all kinds of money to hire outside law firms. If I'm going to sue the president or somebody else who's working along with the president, I believe the district attorney's office should have the assets themselves because unlike the previous regimes, I don't know about them hiring outside law firms when you have a full contingent of attorneys who should be able to handle any of these type of law firm, any of these type of suits. So in terms of what am I going to do? I'm going to stand up to Donald Trump and his policies, but I'm not just going to do it so that I can go on MSNBC as the spokesperson saying I'm going to stand up to him. I'm going to stand up to him. How can I say this? If he wants to cross the line, then he's going to have to deal with me. I'm not going to be afraid of this man. I've jumped out of airplanes. I've served our nation. I understand what it means to uphold an oath. But my main focus is going to be on the safety inside Philadelphia every single day. My assets are going to be spent chasing down people with AK 47s in our streets. And yes, when somebody comes here to assault somebody, I'm going to hold them criminally liable as well, no matter who it is, whether it's a supporter of the current president, ICE agents, yes, they have to follow the law as well. What are they going to do that we're going to be able to hold an ICE agent with a federal judicial warrant responsible for? If they break the law, of course, we're going to prosecute them. I'm going to follow the evidence as it comes in, even against ICE agents and Trump people.
Thank you. We're winding through these questions. So thank you very much, both for your participation and your patience as we talk about these very important things. I will go to Bridget. Do you want to ask the next question, or just because it's gone in this order, I can just ask this next question?
Go ahead. You can.
Okay. So we all know that as the NAACP, the African American community has had an interesting dynamic with the justice system. Sometimes we believe our complaints aren't taken seriously enough, but then our actions are taken overly seriously as to be overrepresented in this system. And, it doesn't matter who gets in, we still feel like the system's approach eats up our actions a lot more for whatever reasons. So we want both. We want public safety and fairness, but public safety is something that we both strive for. So I will ask this to you, and I'll start with you, DA Krasner. Public safety also includes victims, faith that justice is being served, but without overreach. So how do you ensure that victims' rights and victims themselves, family members, are respected while also preventing prosecutorial overreach?
Thank you for that question. It's a very important question. I will say that, let me just start out by saying Officer Josie had a victim. And when you have overwhelming evidence and acquit that police officer, that's not respecting the victim. And it's also ironic that we're hearing about how my opponent is going to go after Donald Trump and ICE agents when we saw what he did with Josie. I find that very problematic. In terms of what we have done for victims, I started out with 29 people doing victim advocacy based on the prior administration's hiring. I grew it to 58, and it wasn't easy. We had to find a lot of pockets. We started a brand new unit that never existed called the CARES unit for the purpose of taking care of families who lost someone to homicide. That was 12 people at one point. A new innovation that has done very well and been refunded. We have tightened up the documentation and accountability for efforts to contact families so that lawyers and victim advocates have to record it with great specificity every different means they use: telephone, email, letter, detective going to the house, looking through property databases, whatever it may be, to try to get in touch with them. And they are entitled to have their voice heard and have it very, very carefully considered. I meet with homicide victims' families more than any of my predecessors. I do it all the time. And I find that what they want is not the simplistic version that you will get from the kind of, Republicans who support my opponent. What you actually find is they want a whole bunch of different things. They want trauma support. They want help. They want to know more about how it happened. Sometimes they even want restorative justice and some aspect of it in relation to something terrible that has happened to their family. And so you have to honor that. You have to respect that. If what they're needing to do is something in honor of their lost loved one, you have to try to support that. And we are doing that every day.
Thank you for that question. Judge Dugan, as you formulate your answer, I would like to ask you that, victims' approaches and victims have often been seeming to be left out of what they believe is the progressive prosecution approach. However, many of us do not want to see overreach by carrying a total victim-centered approach that you cannot see the fundamental issues with the system as it relates to overreach and bringing people in. How will you go about making sure that people can feel that balance, but also ensuring that victims feel respected by your office?
Yeah, I'm really glad that there's now an emphasis on victims advocacy now, because for the last 7 years on the bench, I didn't see that at all. And all I had to do was turn on the TV or read the newspaper, because families have organized because they're not hearing about their loved ones who have been murdered. They're not being kept in touch with by the current district attorney's office. That's just a fact. In fact, the mayor had to start a victims advocacy office out of the mayor's office, which, why do we need that if it's so robust in the DA's office? It's not robust. It's been flailing. It's been failing. So we have to fix that. And I'm hoping that the DA is currently fixing that. He's certainly saying he is. So I hope he is. But for the last 7.5 years, it's been a huge failure. It's been almost like the number one issue. So the balance has been for the criminal and not the law and not the victim, and certainly not the victim's family. So we have to go back in time, Lara. We sure do. We have to go back in time to get back to looking at the victims and keeping, in fact, the Victims' Bill of Rights says we should keep in touch. We have to keep in touch with them. The office currently is failing out that. And of course, there has to be a balance. We have to follow the evidence. We have to talk to the victims, their families. But if the evidence, we have to follow which way the evidence is going. And that's how we move forward. But nothing is a cookie cutter. No victims' family, no defense, no fact pattern. None of them are cookie cutter. So we have to look at everything individually and then proceed forward individually based off the evidence and the various facts involving all these parties, in terms of victims and the actual the facts that as they're coming forward.
That's time.
Thank you for that. I just want a brief follow-up with you, DA Krasner, as well as you, Judge Dugan. We all know that some of this stuff is very gray. There's very gray areas because people are both victim and offender do overlap. How would your approach deal with knowing that fact? And what would we do, what are we able to do to explain to the public that just because there's been a harm doesn't mean the justice system is always the best approach, but there may be other approaches that can be taken. I'll start with you by giving you a minute, DA Krasner, and then Judge Dugan, you can respond.
Well, thank you for the question again. Civil rights attorney, Bradford-Grey, and I say that with respect. I used to be a civil rights attorney too. How I have to admit, I have slightly lost track of the question. I'm sitting in a car and something just happened in front of me that was a little too exciting. May I ask you to state it again? My apologies.
Yes, I do say that there's oftentimes a very gray area to the word victim, where victims and offenders often overlap
That's
very
right.
much. And how is it that your approach would help people understand the balance between using the justice system or other approaches for that gray area?
Thank you. My apologies for losing track there. Um, I mean, it's something that you do when you do individual justice. When you do individual justice, that means you need to know pretty much everything about the defendant, pretty much everything about the victim and the witnesses. And you need to be willing to digest all of that to try to do the right thing. It is reality that people who've been terribly deprived and victimized when they are younger are more likely to commit crimes as they move on through life. So we have to know that, and we have to be willing to address it in a way that is balanced. Um, I think that is sort of at the core of it, that recognition that if you have been suffering tremendous deprivation or tremendous harm, as I saw in the biographies of many of the juvenile lifers before we resentenced them, and by the way, resentenced them to less time in jail than my predecessors, and by the way, have seen them come out of jail a safer population than the general population. I believe that's the core to it. You have to be open to knowing everything about the details and to doing individual justice.
Thank you. Judge Dugan, can you answer that gray area where
Sure.
we really talk about people as if they only share one attribute? However,
Right.
when I say there's a huge overlap, 40% of the people that come before our courts have been a victim in some sort. It may have gotten services or may have not, but there are more stories to be told than just labeling one a victim or offender. How would your office's approach deal with that?
Yeah, so for 17 years, I pride myself with being part of restorative and rehabilitative type justice programs from Veterans Court, Dawn's Court, Court, Alternative Misdemeanor Program. Is a program that I was hoping that the district attorney's office would embrace programs like that, where you have nurses, mental health specialists, community service folks, substance abuse therapists, mentors, people who are in the courtroom who can help assess each individual that comes in so we could figure out, besides the criminal allegation, what else is it that we could help this person with, which is what I did quite successfully in Veterans Court. I want to expand all these to more programs so that we have more help to peel the layers of the onion away to see what we could do, not just for what the law is, but what is it about that individual who's a criminal defendant now? How can we help them? And I did this. I was going into the prisons. I would go into Graterford, talk to the lifers with newer defendants so that they would not become a lifer, would not become cellmates to people like Comar Glass, who I got to befriend, who is a lifer up in Graterford. So we have to peel the onion away on each case and see what else we could deal with besides the allegations against that individual.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The effectiveness of a district attorney's office depends heavily on stable leadership and staff morale. What are your specific plans to recruit, retain, and support qualified prosecutors and victim advocates? And will you also commit to diversity, equity, and inclusion in those plans? Judge Dugan, you may begin.
Yes, I would actually commit to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The office should look like the city of Philadelphia. In terms of my leadership, I did lead municipal court for 5 years. My peers elected me to be the president judge, and we have 3 divisions, hundreds of thousands of cases each year, over 300 employees. So, and I led it during things like COVID. So I was like a wartime president. And in that leadership skills, I went behind the bars and opened up COVID court. I was a judge inside the prisons with only a mask prior to a vaccination to handle cases of men and women who were still trapped in jail, waiting for their day in court because the world stopped. So I have the leadership skills that I will step up, get my hands dirty, and lead from the front. I have no issues doing that. These are things that I've been involved with. The hiring practices in municipal court, the folks that I brought in, the Diversity, equity, inclusion. I was one of the leaders in the court who brought a world-renowned, a nationally known woman by the name of Shaka White to be the first DEI officer of the first judicial district. She was followed by another young man who works in the court system. I hired the chief of diversion courts for municipal court is a young lady of color who's just a rising star. Someday she'll actually run the court system. This is the type of leadership that I'll bring in. But I will also recruit attorneys locally from the local law schools. I'll take those stars from the Ivy Leagues from outside, but they're leaving us. Too many of them are leaving. 68 out of 78 attorneys have left the office in one class. I want kids from Drexel, Temple, Villanova, Widener, Rutgers, Camden, all the local law
That's your
schools, so
time.
they stay invested in our city and don't leave us.
Thank
Thank you.
DA Krasner.
Oh my goodness, the ironies. Okay, so number one, my opponent never went to a college or a law school in Philadelphia, just so we're clear. Number
Rutgers,
two,
Camden.
every HBCU law school in the United States is not in Philadelphia. Okay, so, and I'm hearing for the very first time from my opponent, who just keeps saying don't leave the Philadelphia area to hire anybody, that now he will take people from farther away. Well, there's a reason, and that is that because my office has been more successful than any in history in Philadelphia at bringing in talent and bringing in diverse talent. The head of our major trials unit now was hired from Howard, and she was hired only 6 years ago. She is that good. Those are the people I want, and that is why I go all over the country, including all the Philadelphia area schools, the HBCU law schools, and many other law schools to bring diversity in every single category. Once again, judge a tree by its fruit. We have more diversity in every single category. The only portion of our lawyer and staff population shrinking, people like me. It's white men. That is the only one that is shrinking. And all this talk about retention, our retention is actually fabulous. Despite all of this talk about one class. Why is he talking about one class? Because he doesn't want to talk about the big picture. This is a repeating pattern that you will see with my opponent. It's a little selective factoid as opposed to the big picture. We are more aggressive than any county DA's office in the United States at pursuing talent. We go all over the country. It's a lot of work. I sometimes spend a couple months on the road doing 16-hour days in order to speak to them and interview them myself. And I must say, it really irks me when I hear a judge who is in municipal court, which means he does misdemeanors. He has never, to my knowledge, let me not say never, I'm not aware of any history of my opponent, either as an attorney or a judge, completing felony trials, completing them. And yet he is sitting in judgment on these incredibly talented young lawyers, some of whom have done more felony trials than he.
I want to thank you for.
Can I just have 30 seconds, please?
Yeah, one moment. Judge Dugan, we will give you a minute to rebut since your name was mentioned. Can you please also address how you can maintain a diverse attorney population at the DA's office, and whether you will look to hire at any of the HBCU law schools, which are, not in or around Pennsylvania, and, including some of us that may go to Howard Law, but love Philadelphia and want to come home and serve our population?
Of course, I will go to the HBCUs. Absolutely will. And just so the record's clear, yeah, I went to a local law school. It's called Rutgers Camden, right across the bridge. The turnover rate in the DA's office, I gave one class, but my understanding that I read in the newspaper said it's up to 77% have left. It was like 250 some out of 3 something. That, I'm sorry, I don't have the statistics in my hand. Release those facts, Larry. But I'm telling you, Larry, how many cases did you ever prosecute before you were the DA? 0. And it's almost to that extent right now. I know you haven't been in a courtroom prosecuting. I've been a leader. I can bring in good attorneys to run an effective office that knows how to communicate with witnesses, who know how to train their DAs. Read the articles that DAs have written themselves after they've left about how it's an echo chamber. There's almost zero training. I think I could do a lot better than that. I can bring in people to train a new class of DAs.
All right. Thank you so much. I think, look, I appreciate the passion in both of you. We have about 3 more questions, so thank you for hanging with us. And I just want to give a shout out to HBCUs. I'm an HBCU grad. My children are HU Howard, and Bridget, co-moderator, is too. So I do hope whatever happens, HBCUs continue to be a priority for recruitment.
My daughter graduates this coming Friday from Delaware State University.
Be
That's
proud.
right.
Be proud. Well done.
HBCU grads here, so I'm very proud. Want to ask this question: if perception is reality, how important is it to have a clear conflict of interest policy that will allow both victims and defendants to trust the process? So, what if any practices should be put in place to ensure that conflict of interests are flagged? Is that working out for you, DA Krasner, in your current policy? And Judge Dugan, given some of the perceptions of you with respect to your bias towards law enforcement, what opportunities would you have to create a clear conflict of interest policy? I'll start with you, DA Krasner.
Okay, thank you. We do have a clear conflict of interest policy. The only wrinkle with me, of course, is that I had tried a million cases, had a million clients over the years. And so we had to make an effort, if I had been the attorney, a defense attorney for anyone, to make sure I didn't make any decision in that case. We follow that all the time. When there are other, personal, political, or friendly relationships that might impinge my judgment, those conflicts will go to my first assistant or to another person to make all those kinds of decisions. We have other people who have worked as attorneys on both sides in the past, and we pursue that. It's very important to do that. But this does highlight, one of the things that I have heard a number of times, all this talk about Steve Jones. Steve Jones was a ward leader. I was photographed with Steve Jones, as I'm photographed with many, many, many other people all the time, not realizing that he was the same Steve Jones, common name, that my office vigorously prosecuted, convicted, and asked to be put in jail. A judge declined to put him in jail while he awaited sentencing, so I ended up in a photograph with him. And what did I see? I saw my opponent putting out a press release that just in the title contained 3 falsehoods. Okay. And now we're seeing it again with Sergio Hyland. Conflict. Sergio Hyland has never worked for me at all, period. Period. Those are the facts. I didn't even know who he was when I heard his name. Have I been in the same room with him because he was employed by an entity that does some criminal justice work? I was, but I did not know his name. I had simply been in the room with him a few times. And of course, when we found out the atrocious facts of the new case with which he is charged, we vigorously charged it. We sought that he be held without bail. He is being held without bail. You can't turn stories of bona fide integrity into stories of corruption. And you can't do it by misleading people. I hope that is not something that will continue in this campaign.
Thank you. Judge Dugan, can you please respond to that question and be specific in terms of what you believe the conflicts of interest would be with respect to you?
Yeah, the conflicts of interest would be any type of political connections, friends, family, business dealings that I've had. So obviously there has to be a policy saying that it's not going to stay with me. And if I can, I will refer it out if it's something that's appropriate that perhaps somebody else should handle. But I think being the top prosecutor, it would not look good if I had somebody who was an ardent supporter of mine, like somebody who endorsed me last election 4 years ago. I give them money out of my campaign. I give them $3,500, and then convicted of being a pedophile. And I'm the only person. The DA is the only person campaigning who knows, because it's not out there publicly, that this ward leader is a convicted pedophile. The attorneys that were in the courtroom, there were 3 or 4 judges who recused themselves because they knew he was a ward leader. So those DAs in the room did not communicate with the current district attorney to say, hey, a ward leader is a convicted pedophile. After the conviction, the current district attorney is out there seeking his endorsement, and I wasn't invited to that one. How about that for some sort of talking back and forth? And Sergio Hyland, the guy right now who is being charged with murder, that is one that's clear cut that the district attorney should recuse, should be sent to the attorney general or somebody else, because this guy has been an ardent supporter of the DA for a long time, again, including sitting in the front row at a couple debates, heckling me. And there are numerous photos back and forth at seminars, at events with Mr. Krasner and Sergio together. The facts are pointing that they know each other. He may say they not, but for the looks, he probably should recuse himself, because I certainly would.
Thank you.
All right, I think we are wrapping up, and I really appreciate you guys' time. I know that you are busy. We have one more question that deals with the issues of today that I believe that district attorneys, whatever you name yourself, progressive, non-progressive, have to deal with, and that is the integrity of the convictions that you have inherited. One of the things that we have seen lately is that in recent history, the conviction integrity units process has been spotlighted. However, the current DA's office's conviction integrity unit has seen a drop in exonerations, with more cases ending in plea deals rather than full vindication. How do you explain this trend, DA Krasner, and what would you do differently to ensure the integrity of the process of your conviction integrity unit, either by granting full exonerations when they're called for or making sure that cases are going in without a lot of scrutiny?
Thank you for the question. Number one, I wouldn't change much. The fact is, Philadelphia has been incredibly robust with exonerations, unlike anything in its history. The fact is that judges agree with us almost 95% of the time. We had 10% of all exonerations in the United States last year. We had 15 exonerations. There were 153 in the U.S. They all came out of one county. That is Philadelphia. We are arguably leading the nation in this category. So that's good. What's also good is that when people are likely innocent or definitely innocent, we don't want a guilty plea. But when they're likely guilty or definitely guilty, we do. Part of what happened with the prior administration is they cheated so much that they would not give people fair trials. Sometimes those people were innocent. That's horrific. They should come out with a full exoneration, and they should be able to file a lawsuit if that's what it is, with whatever law firm, right? But if you did it and you got robbed of your right to a fair trial, then that is a more appropriate situation for you to enter some kind of a time in guilty plea or some other sort of a guilty plea, or to have a retrial. Some of these folks have a choice. They will take their time in guilty plea rather than a retrial under certain circumstances, and we will offer it under certain circumstances because it's often very difficult to retry cases later. We try to do this thing with a scalpel, not with a chainsaw. And that means if they're really innocent, we're going to treat them that way. And that means if they're really guilty, we're going to treat them that way. But we are never going to vouch for prosecutions that lack integrity. We're never going to say it's okay not to turn over evidence the defense should have. We're never going to say, I reject that this person should have DNA, like my predecessors did, sometimes fighting for 6-7 years to stop a retesting of DNA. Who would do that? We're not going to do those sort of things. I am truly proud of the record. I only wish that we had more funding and more people in our conviction integrity unit, because we could do more cases more quickly.
Thank you for that response. Judge Dugan, given the fact that you will have inherited a conviction integrity unit process, what will you do to either improve or continue? What would you want to continue in terms of making sure that the convictions that you inherit have integrity?
Yeah, I would certainly keep something resembling the conviction integrity unit, but I would emphasize the word integrity. I would emphasize the word integrity for those who are going to work in the conviction integrity unit. I would certainly try to make it more robust, but integrity is the key. Now, judges have found that the current district attorney's office has actually lacked integrity when we're talking about the conviction integrity unit. So, yes, a judge recently fined the district attorney's office $120,000 for withholding 3 boxes of evidence for 7 years. So, the standard that we're trying to hold previous regimes to should be held right now. That's the standard that should be while people are reviewing these cases, and that's not been happening. Yes, a a very senior assistant district attorney, got on the stand and said he did absolutely nothing despite filing the damn motion. So he was the one who's saying all this stuff is true, but he did nothing. He didn't verify a damn thing. That cannot be like that. That judge, $120,000, and every assistant, every district attorney in the city of Philadelphia must take 12 hours of ethics class that was supposed to be supervised by the disciplinary board with an emphasis to candor of the court. One of the ladies who was the leader of this unit that Larry brought in, Patricia Cummings, nationally known, she was subpoenaed to come to that court case, and she told the lawyers, if I came, I'm going to have to plead the fifth. So I'm going to get rid of people who might have to plead the fifth. They don't have it. They can't work for me. Now I know she was already gone, but if they even think that they're going to plead the fifth, they can't work in that unit because no innocent person should stay in jail. And everybody in the system should work together to get that person out, including people who were convicted with corruption or somebody cheating. But the people who are overseeing it should not be cheating or being corrupt as well. And it wasn't, there was also a federal judge who said the same exact thing.
Well, I think that was the end of our questions. And before we move forward to do that, I will just ask either one, before you do your closing, do you want to have a 30-second chance to rebut? I think we have just a very few minutes. You get 30 seconds. Larry, if you want to rebut, and then Judge, if you have a rebuttal for 30 seconds.
Yes, I would like to.
Go
Number
ahead.
one, okay, Patricia Cummings never said she's going to take a fifth. That is false. The judge he admires so much, that lifelong Republican, she's the one who the Superior Court said had an animus against the DA's office. Her order has been completely wiped out by the filing of an appeal, and it's not uncommon for what she does to be completely overturned on appeal. We will see if that occurs. You are hearing the voices of the past, and they're coming through my opponent.
Thank you. And now you're saying that order has not been overturned. You have filed an appeal. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it was vacated by the filing of the appeal, yes.
Okay. I just don't want to mince the words. You filed an appeal, so therefore the ruling right now has not been overturned, but it will be appealed. It is being appealed.
It's under appeal at this time, yes.
All right. Thank you. Judge Dugan, you have 30 seconds.
Very Trumponian. You don't agree with the judge? Go ahead and take him on publicly, just like Donald Trump does. That's what Larry does. That's what he says about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, who says all he does is take a knee. That's what he's saying about Judge Coyle. That's what he says about the other Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas judges. And that's what he calls the federal judge Gonzalez, Mitch Goldberg. I'm sorry. Mitch Goldberg. He'll say the same thing about him, that he's just some whack job out there. Sounds just like Donald Trump, because frankly, Larry, you and him are more similar than you want to take credit for.
That's your time.
All right. Well, we have come to the end, and I want to first of all thank the two of you for spending the time that we needed to answer these questions. I think that they were very tough. I want to turn it over to President Hicks before we end and before you guys get to say your final words.
Okay, I just want to thank them. I thought this was very, very informative. Thank you both. And then you will have, I believe, what are they getting, 2 minutes for ending? And I'll let Bridget and Zuleika say something before we close. But thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it.
Zuleika, you can share any remarks.
I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for joining. Thank you, President Hicks, for supporting us with this forum. Thank you, Keir, for agreeing to moderate and all your help with this event. And to everyone on the call, thank you for taking this Sunday afternoon to be a part of this important forum. One thing that I did want to throw out there is there are other events that are happening up until the upcoming primary. So I just encourage you all to attend them and to and educate yourself as much as possible so you can make an informed decision.
Thank you, Zuleika.
Thank you.
Bridget.
So with that, we will have our two candidates spend 2 minutes giving closing remarks. Since the incumbent began with opening remarks, I'll have Judge Dugan start for us. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for everybody listening. Again, I appreciate the NAACP for having this debate. I'm hoping that we have, quote, more forums and debates. I've agreed to every single one that's coming up. I'm just not sure my opponent has agreed to them. He continues to make, more, he wants more demands in order to get these debates on. I'm willing to do it on every single channel, every radio station, any forum whatsoever with zero demands, except Larry, he just keeps making these demands. I'm a lifelong Philadelphian, and I truly believe that I am more a reformer than the guy who claims he is the most progressive DA in the country. What he is he's a non-prosecutor. And you know who the biggest victims are in the city of Philadelphia? If you look at who the victims are in the body bags and whose neighborhoods are getting shot up, it's people of color. It's people of color who are being shot, who are being wounded, who are being victimized, who are losing stores in their neighborhoods, who can't find a pharmacy because of the retail theft policy, because of the lack of gun convictions, because of letting people go when they're violently hurting people in the neighborhoods. I go to every single neighborhood and people are telling me they are afraid, they don't feel safe, they don't let their children walk to school, they don't let them go to the playground. We are not freer, we are not safer. Bus drivers came to me because the district attorney does not communicate with them when they are victims. Their cases fall apart. Paramedics, the same issue. Philadelphia, we've had 8 years of failed policy. We could do a hell of a lot better, and the numbers were going through the roof. The only reason numbers are coming down is because of the mayor and the commissioner, who he doesn't work well with at all. So I know I'm going to work with them a hell of a lot better than he is. We could do much better. 8 years of failed policy, folks. Come on, let's stop the insanity.
Thank you.
D.A. Krasner.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to speak to all of you. One of the things I love about this forum every year is I know that the audience is sophisticated, and frankly, I just don't have to answer everything because the audience knows what's going on. The audience remembers public hearings, both in city council and in the legislature, about the toxic, discriminatory environment in the municipal court when my opponent was in charge of the municipal court. This audience understands that when my opponent says we are not safer and we are not freer, what he is saying is completely counterfactual. When he keeps emphasizing fear, 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 we know what he's doing. We've seen it done by the Republican Party ever since Richard Nixon. We've seen it done very recently by Donald Trump, the President of the United States. And I would ask you to remember, as you look at our many accomplishments, I would ask you to remember that the fruit tells you about the tree. When we are a lot safer, which we are, and we are a lot freer, which we are, and it is a lot fairer than when we started, that things are working well. I also want to say this. This city needs a fighter. And this city needs someone who's going to stand up to DC, not someone who forgets to mention the 10th Amendment, not someone who forgets to talk about the fact that the president has no pardon power for state court convictions, not someone who would have hesitated, paused, and failed to go after Elon Musk. This city needs its protection, and they need someone who will do so without reservation. An awful lot of people went to war and died when they were merely teenagers or in their young 20s for this country. It's easy as can be for me to say some things into a microphone that need to be said. And one of them needs to be said to Washington, D.C. right now. And that is, if you're going to come here and commit crimes, you can F around and find out. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to do one quick fact check. I do remember the Cures report, and I will say this. The Cures report information was gathered by Judge Nyfield, was the president judge. It came out when Judge Dugan was the president judge. So the information that was gathered was collected before Judge Dugan's presidency. So I just want to keep facts. Opinions are great, but I want to keep facts. I want to thank you so much. And I want to just give a shout out to my co-moderator, Bridget Warlea, HU. And again, another plug for our HBCUs. I think it's so important to have people with perspective that this system has its largest impact on, and which is the African American and Brown in Latina community. We can't lose that fact. These are life-changing decisions, and we need someone that's going to understand the balance necessary, but also making sure that we are safe in our own communities and our own skin. Thank you so much, President Hicks, for giving me the opportunity to be a co-moderator.
Great. Thank you so much, Keir. And with that, I'm just going to inform the community about our May 20th primary elections. Tomorrow is the last day to register to vote. And as you know, our district attorney position is up. We are also voting on judges in the Court of Common Pleas and the municipal court, as well as city controller. So all of these positions are just as important. So please register to vote by tomorrow and come out May 20th.
Thank you, guys. Excellent conversation. We do appreciate your time. And again, we have a lot of respect for both of you for all you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yes.
You too.
The rest of your Sunday.